Hey everybody, Thacia here with Legacy of Light in conjunction with One Love Wellness Center here in Menasha, Wisconsin. Coming to you for one of my 365 days from my heart to yours. And I'm going to be reading a story from the Lakota Way. And it's stories and lessons for living. And I thought about just telling the story, but I really decided to go with the author's version, so to speak, and it's, the tradition of their storytelling, and to go with that. So the story is the story of no moccasins, and it's dealing with humility, or un-she-ee-cee-yah-pee, to be humble, modest, unpretentious. And I'm just going to start a little ways in to get the important parts. When I was a young man, I traveled south from my mother and father's village to hunt. I came to a village that was encamped for the summer just north of the running water river. There was a great feasting and dance at the time, for there had been a fight and a great victory over the enemies of the south. I was invited to join in the celebration. It was a good time, and there was much food, and we danced into the night. I awoke the next morning beside the trail to the water and looked at the largest and most wonderful eyes I had ever seen, as a young woman was gazing down at me. She said, "It is funny what suddenly grows beside this trail." I jumped up to my feet and followed her to the water and carried the water skins back to the village for her. That was the best chore I had ever done in my life. The next evening I stood in line outside the lodge of this young woman, with all the other young men who had come to court her. Her name was Carries the Fire, and she did put a fire in my heart. I was very surprised when she asked me to come again the next evening. You will not be surprised when I tell you I remained in her village until the autumn hunts. By then, for reasons I still cannot understand, but for which I am grateful, she had decided that I might be a good husband. So I went back to the north to tell my family so they could prepare the gifts to her family for the bride price. We were married the following spring. In between was the longest winter of my life. So I left my family and became part of her village, as is custom among us. Not long after that, enemies came among us from the south on a revenge raid for the defeat they had suffered before. They killed a man and took 2 young women. A war party went south on their trail, and I went along. We had trailed them for half a moon, it seemed, going far into the country I'd never seen. We traveled fast and caught up with them as they rejoiced in their village. We hid and watched. We saw where they had put 2 young women. Later we saw where their night sentinels were and made a plan. There were 6 of us. That night 2 of us would set fire to the east of the village, and 2 of us would do the same at the west. While the men of the village were busy putting out the fires, 2 of us would sneak in and take back our young women. The plan worked, except for one thing. I was one of the 2 who sneaked into the village, and I was captured. By dawn, all of our war party had escaped back north, and the 2 young women, and I was glad to pay the price for a good raid. As you might think, my captors were very angry. They made me a slave. All my clothing was taken from me, everything. I was led around naked. Everyone laughed. I was made to work. I pulled drag poles like a dog until my hands and knees were bleeding. They teased me. They threw dirt in my face. Women pulled up their dresses in front of me and laughed, showing me that I was no longer a man. They gave me no food, so I had to fight with the dogs for scraps. And at night they bound me hand and foot and stretched me between 2 stout poles. There was no way to escape. I began to feel lower than a dung beetle. I lost count of days, but I looked for ways to escape. But lack of food made me very weak, and I knew that before I was too weak, I had to escape. After a time, they stopped putting a guard to sit and watch me at night. Night after night, I pulled at the poles which held me, and little by little I loosened them. But someone saw what I had done and pounded the poles deeper. I was discouraged. I'm not ashamed to tell you that one night I prayed to the great mystery to give me a quick death. I could not escape. I was too weak. One night it was cold and rainy, and I was naked and shivering, and there was no one about, and it was too cold. Even the dogs curled up out of the rain. My heart was sad, and I thought about my young wife, and that I would never ever see her again. I thought about her so much that her face appeared to me, and after a moment I realized it was real. She was there. While I lay there in disbelief, she cut my bonds with her knife, pulled me to my feet, and guided me out of the enemy's village. I was weak from hunger, and my mind was not clear. But I know we walked through the night, and by dawn we arrived at the hiding place she had prepared. The rain had fallen through the night and washed out our tracks. She could not have found a better time to come. She'd hidden food and weapons. As my mind cleared, I saw that she was wearing men's clothes, mine, to disguise herself for the journey. We hid, and we ate, and we rested. She told me that the other men had returned home with the news that I had been killed. She grieved for a time, she said, but she found herself not believing I was really dead. One night she made preparations and left camp. The others had told her where the enemy camp was located, and she knew where to look. After many days of hiding and watching, she came into the camp on that rainy night. Though our tracks were washed out by the rain, the enemy knew we had to travel north to come home, so they sent out a war party. After a few days of resting and hiding, we were eager to start home. We knew to be cautious, and of course we looked often at our back trail. This is how we saw others heading in the same direction, 6 of them moving fast. I knew they had to come from the village where I had been captive, and those 6 men were the best of their warriors. I had escaped when they were certain I could not. They could not know that I had help. Because my escape was an insult, they could not just let it pass. They sent out their best trackers and their fiercest warriors. We covered our trails as best as we could, but it did not matter. They were running, and I could not. Carrie's the Fire and I decided that we should hide so that we would not leave a trail that they could find. But they had to be thrown off somehow. I thought about it, but I could do nothing, so I did not speak that thought to her. But she had thought the same. We made a good hiding place in an old bear's den. That afternoon while I slept, she slipped away. She returned that evening wet and barefoot. She had placed her moccasins near a creek that lay a false trail for our pursuers. Later she told me that when they nearly spotted her, that she hid in a beaver's lodge. She had to go into the creek and come up on the inside of the beaver's house. I teased her, saying that she should have a new name, No Moccasins. After 2 days, we left our hiding place and struck out west and traveled in the direction for 3 days, then north. I began to call her No Moccasins because it was a name of honor for what she had done. That is why my wife is called No Moccasins. Though I grew stronger each day, it did not ease the journey home. We had to watch for enemies, find food, and shelter each night. But it was her quiet courage, more than anything, that was our greatest strength. The people were surprised to see us. They believed I had been killed and that my wife had gone off and killed herself. This is not unknown. My wife did not want me to tell our story and would only let me say that I had escaped from my captors. The people honored me for that, but it was not my victory. I have asked you old ones to our lodge to witness for me. It is time to repay the great debt I owe my wife. Throughout my life, I was fortunate as a warrior, and somehow I was able to win some honors and gain a reputation. Yet all those honors are not mine, because I could not have achieved them if my wife had not risked her life. I have not heard of any man in my lifetime who has done a braver deed. She traveled alone into enemy country and sneaked into enemy's village. Few men can say they have done that. Because of her deed, I took the warpath each time with one thought in mind, to be worthy of my wife. For my life long I have tried to be worthy, but I am afraid I am not. So I must give all these honors to the one who truly deserves them. I give them to my wife. I ask that my warrior weapons and my eagle feather staff be moved from the man's place in our lodge to the woman's place, where they rightfully should be. I will leave this world soon, and I ask that another thing be done. I ask that my burial scaffold only hold my body wrapped in my burial robe. I will leave this world as the man I was before I met my wife, poor and unadorned. All that I appeared to be would not have been if not for this woman. Three Horns sighed it deeply and settled back. No Moccasin silently wept her tears and wiped them away and pulled the robe up over her husband. I have known good people in my life, Three Horns continued. Many were wise, honorable, generous, and brave, but none, except this old woman who sits beside me always, had the one strength that gives true meaning to all others, humility. She did a brave thing, and no one, not the strongest warrior among us, has yet to do the same. Yet she cared not if anyone ever knew. It is time that everyone knows. Thus I have spoken. The old ones who gathered with Three Horns gave their word to tell the story of No Moccasins' courage and humility. Through the days and night that followed, young and old alike crowded around the campfires to listen to the old ones. Before long, No Moccasin's name rose through the smoke from many campfires. Days later, Three Horns died in the arms of his beloved, No Moccasins. Though her loss was great, she comforted others. As he wished, Three Horns' burial scaffold was unadorned. Those who mourned for him also honored his widow. No Moccasins cut her hair short for mourning, but nothing else outwardly changed. She lived her life the same as always, a small, quiet old woman amidst the bustle of a busy city. She gave her husband's eagle feather staff, his shield, and his weapons to the Kit Fox Warrior Society. They in turn decided to hang those symbols of honor in the great council lodge in the center of the village. There they would remain as a reminder of one man's courage and an old woman's humility. The honor and reverence that Three Horns was given in his life now belonged to No Moccasins. Not a day went by that a gift of food was not left outside her door, and every day she shared those gifts with the very young and the very old. For the rest of her days, No Moccasin wanted for nothing. In the winter, the firewood piled outside her door was nearly as high as her lodge. This, too, she shared. She welcomed all those who came to visit, and many who did were warriors from near and far. They came to bring gifts and to share a meal and to sit in the presence of courage, to learn humility. No Moccasins died in her 70th winter, and on her burial scaffold were hung her husband's shield, his weapons, and the eagle feather staff. On the ground below were piled hundreds of moccasins, so she would not have to journey to the other side in bare feet. So that is the beautiful story of No Moccasins and how we can have humility. And I think a lot of times, to me, it seems the greatest warriors are the ones that are humble, that don't need to be recognized for their good deeds. And sure, sometimes it feels good to be recognized, but also to have humility and to do things without that need for recognition because you want to, because you want to share your love, to me is more beautiful than that need for recognition and to be like, oh, guess what I did. And this is just a beautiful illustration of that, and how here was this great warrior saying that he'd never met another man in all his years who is as brave as his wife, because she showed humility and she showed him what humility was, and he honored and he appreciated her for that, and every time he went into battle, it was to live up to what she had done, and felt like he never did, because this idea of putting helping someone out just because you love them in front of recognition, of being recognized for your good deeds. She did it from her heart. And because she loved him, so the whole thing just continued in that. She saved him because she loved him. She threw off the trail because she loved him. She wanted to honor him as a warrior, as a man. So she didn't allow him to tell the story that she saved him, because that, you know, in the time in their culture is you know, greater than her saying, "Oh, I saved him," you know, and everybody would have been okay with that. But she wanted to honor her commitment of love to her husband. So she let him say that he escaped. Because it was all about love. And really, in the end of everything, that's what it is. Love. And this is just a beautiful story on honoring one another in love and humility, to be humble and modest and unpretentious, and to live life that way. To honor yourself and those around you. So, I love you all, and just know that you are eternally adored. And to just take the story to heart. And learn from it. And set it as something to strive for, to be humble, to honor yourself and those that you love. By doing things just because you love them. That's why I'm doing these videos. Because of my immense love for you all. And for anybody who would ever possibly watch this video and receive from it. Because my best is your best. We grow together. And this is the legacy that I want to leave, of light and of love and of adoration for every one of you. So I will be back tomorrow with whatever comes. So have a good night, and I love you all.